Why is deletion interesting to us? We're at a privacy conference. Hopefully, this is obvious to some of you, right? But deletion is helpful in enforcing a number of privacy principles, right? So data minimization, only using the minimum sort of data that you have. Apart from privacy considerations, many companies may have resource constraints that make it useful for them to know how to delete their data. And we now have GDPR Article 17, which tells us that or essentially establishes the right to the erasure of personal information. So if I'm a data subject, an insurance company has data about me and I suddenly object to the processing of that data, or that data is no longer useful or relevant for the purposes for which it's been collected, I can go to them and say, please delete the data you have about me. So this is sort of interesting from a policy perspective, and what I'm hoping to sort of show in the next few slides is that the engineering decisions that are made at the outset by data analytics companies, by either your data processor or your data controller, really has a significant impact on how that data deletion is ultimately implemented and executed sort of on the back end, so to speak. So when you hit delete on your personal computer, right, most of you are hopefully familiar with this, but the first thing that probably happens is a file gets sent to the trash. So the data is obviously, the file is still on your computer. You can go into the trash and say, recover this file. Really nothing has happened with the file on your computer yet. When you empty the trash, I think there are probably a substantial number of folks that think, okay, so the file is gone from my machine. The data has been deleted. In reality, the actual bits in which the file is encoded on disk have not been changed at all. It's simply, there's sort of no way to access the file directly through what's called a pointer, right? Your computer holds pointers to pieces of memory, and that's how we think about accessing files. But the information is still stored on your machine. So sort of emptying your trash is not good enough, right? So then we're going to go to the next level. I really want to delete this data. I'm going to overwrite the bits. I'm actually going to write random ones and zeros to the place on disk where my file was stored, and that's going to actually overwrite the information there. There are actually a number of forensic companies that will say that they can still recover either part of the information or possibly all of it if the original file left a fingerprint of sorts on your disk. So now I'm just going to light my hard drive on fire and just completely burn the whole thing down, and then your data is probably deleted at that point. But the story is a little more complicated, right? And this is only when we're talking about your local machine, right? Either your Mac or your PC. What happens when we're thinking about sort of massive databases that companies are holding, right? The story is more complicated. So a couple of things I just wanted to point out. First of all, deletion is a spectrum, even though obviously in our policies and laws we have to delineate bright lines where we'll actually make a judgment that data has either been deleted or not deleted. There's truly a spectrum, and there's a range of techniques that we can use. I want to stop to say that there's good news here, right, in this whole communication between engineers and policymakers story. As someone that studied computer science but has had some experience with the policy world kind of professionally, I would say that both engineers and policymakers and regulators are trained to think in terms of trade-offs, which is actually really good. When engineers are designing a piece of software, we're thinking about trade-offs between scale, how much memory the program is using, usability, how fast and easy it is to implement, et cetera. And policymakers are thinking about the trade-offs that are inherent in designing any sort of social policy, right? You have a number of stakeholders, you're trying to maximize some sort of social impact, right? And then this kind of third point I want to sort of ask is what constitutes reasonable? And I posit that our understanding of how the underlying technology works implicates our answer to this question. So when policymakers write a law that uses the word reasonable, I know this shows up a lot in US laws, I assume it does in European laws as well, kind of interpreting that word is left up to courts or someone else, and your understanding of that word is probably going to change based on what the technology looks like. So in a database, I won't run through this, but this is just an example that this kind of deletion spectrum exists. There's different levels at which we can say that data is deleted in a traditional in kind of a traditional database. So I want to take a step back and talk about big data. I don't really love this term because I find that it's sort of ill-defined and overused, but I think some people would classify Palantir as a big data company. We work with clients, as John mentioned, to kind of integrate large-scale data sets into a common sort of backend and then provide analytical tools that sit on top of that. And when we talk about big data, the things I think about is, first of all, there's this new reality, right? Data collection and data storage have become really cheap. There's a proliferation of sensors. I think there's like Internet of Things talks tomorrow about this. It's really, really easy to collect a lot of data now, and it's really cheap to store that data because disk is really cheap. Traditionally, when we ask questions about the world, or when scientists ask questions about the world, the way you do it is you form a hypothesis, you go out, you design an experiment, you go out, collect some data, you test it against the hypothesis, and then you refine your hypothesis or model. In this new world, this sort of big data world, or this new emerging field of data science, if some of you have probably heard of that, the idea is that we have all this data that we've collected, and now we want to ask questions about the data. In some instances, this may be very targeted and human-driven analysis. That's sort of more the thing that Palantir would specialize in. In other instances, you're just trying to throw everything and the kitchen sink right at your model, and you're just trying to see what sticks, right? You might try to be building a machine learning model where you have tens of thousands of features to predict something, and you don't really know at the outset. You don't even have a causal hypothesis at the outset, but you just want to know sort of what are the correlations.